of all, we give thanks that we live in a place where all have freedom to pray. Help us to remember we are in a special place consecrated to the principles of democracy and service. Give us wisdom to perceive the right, courage to lead in times of confusion, patience to wait and listen for the hopes and aspirations of our citizens, and wit to devise creative ways of being a community. May we be as concerned for others as for ourselves, and compassionate for the needs of the less fortunate among us. Thus, may the city of ours be a special place. Amen. Thank you. I'm sorry, the monitors aren't on. I was advised just before we came in that there's a technical problem with Rogers, and tonight's council meeting will not be televised live. However, it will be recorded for video streaming. Councillor, would you like to repeat that, please, for the microphone?
I said, how convenient that is.
I think, Councillor, that just speaks to exactly what's going to happen here tonight and the attitude that you bring to it. That's most unfortunate, and I think you deserve, that staff deserve an apology from you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not criticizing staff.
You're accusing someone else?
I'm saying that Rogers
seems
to have a problem with their network, and it always seems to be when we have a council meeting.
Thank you. Unfortunately, that sets the tone for the evening. Disclosures of interest? Disclosure of interest?
Point of order. I just think it'd be good for everyone to know that all of our meetings for the last over a year now have been recorded.
Councillor, that's not a point of order.
Well, just to resolve a dispute.
It's not a point of order. It's not a dispute. I've already told everybody that it's being recorded for video streaming. They can get it tomorrow morning.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Disclosures of interest. Being none noted. Adoption of the minutes.
Move them.
Moved by Councillor Dickerson, seconded by Councillor McLean. The council meeting minutes of July the 8th, the special council meeting of September 3, special in-camera council meeting, same date, planning and development committee meeting of the same date, and the executive committee minutes of September the 9th. Errors or omissions? Being none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We have no presentations this evening, but we do have a number of delegations. Some of them are happy, and I'm pleased to hear that. Our first delegation this evening is from Durham Lifebeat 2013 regarding a musical fundraising initiative for the Rouge Valley Health System Foundation. Mr. Ramnath, I believe you're the presenter this evening, the delegate.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ryan. Thank you, Your Worship, Mayor Ryan, distinguished members of Council, good evening. Thank you for receiving our delegation. This presentation is on behalf of the Organizing Committee for the Durham Lifebeat 2013 event, which is a 24-hour non-stop bandathon musical fundraiser. The fundraiser is aimed at benefiting the clinical and cancer programs for the Rouge Valley Health System Foundation, Ajax Pickering Hospital. There is a threefold purpose to our presentation this evening. First, we will briefly share with you the history and results of past bandathon fundraising projects. Secondly, we will describe the goals and objectives of the Durham Lifebeat 24-hour bandathon fundraiser initiative, our committee's unique marketing strategy, and the effect it is having in the community. And thirdly, we will extend to Mayor Ryan, members of council, and senior staff an invitation to support this fundraising initiative and to attend our upcoming media launch at the Ajax Pickering Hospital this Thursday, September 17th at 11 a.m. In addition, we would like to respectfully extend an invitation for everyone to attend the Bandathon 24-hour musical extravaganza on September 27th and 28th at Pickering High School. History. The idea of having a 24-hour bandathon musical fundraiser came from the Mathivasan and Help for Love organization. Since 2008, this charitable organization has raised over $164,000 for local hospitals. It was established by Mathivasan, or Mathi, Sina Visagama, to honor the memory of his late wife, Bhavatarani, who passed away of cancer. The press release will give further information on this. In 2008, this organization raised $39,000 for the Rouge Valley Health System Foundation. In 2010, $15,000 was raised for the Princess Margaret Hospital Foundation. And in 2012, $56,350 was raised for the Markham Stouffville Hospital Foundation. Mathi and Dinesh Kumar, who is the director of the Rouge Valley Health System Foundation, are responsible for bringing the Bandathon initiative to Durham region. Goal and objective. This is as per the flyer, and I understand that all your councillors have a copy of this flyer. Thank you very much. The goal of the Durham Life Beat 2013 is to raise $100,000 to benefit the clinical and cancer programs of the Rouge Valley Health System Foundation. A specialized high-end, fully articulatable operating room procedure table will be purchased with funds raised. This OR table will be used for countless procedures during its lifetime, mainly for cancer care. The table is radiolucent, meaning that x-rays can be completed with ease during surgery. Depending on the amount of funds raised, other pieces of medical equipment are being considered. Marketing strategy and impact. The marketing strategy for the fundraiser is creating social cohesion and social capital through the support of family, friends, and associates throughout the community. Many multicultural, religious, social service, and other institutions of civil society, including school boards, individual schools, colleges and universities, law enforcement organizations, civic authorities, and other levels of government, along with the business community, are active in this fundraising initiative. The organizing committee is grateful for the marketing, promotional, and networking support received from the city of Pickering, from Mayor David Ryan and Deputy Mayor Councillor Doug Dickerson, also from Cultural and Recreation staff, Marissa Carpino and Tanya Rice, who have provided immeasurable support through distribution of promotional material, event mentions on the family calendar community page, messages on electronic signboards, and through social media outlets, to name but just a few. We would also like to thank Councillor David Pickles for attending our meeting and for the strong, caring support and encouragement of this council. Your leadership in community engagement continues to weave a tapestry that builds strong, vibrant, and sustainable communities. This vision, as exemplified in initiatives such as the Mayor's Gala, continues to significantly upgrade and beneficially impact the quality of healthcare in Durham region and in our province. Contributions of this nature serves to motivate and inspire others, such as our group, to lend a helping hand by harnessing and unleashing the diverse and gifted talents of our youth. Finally, invitations. Dates for your diary. A Bandathon media launch will be staged on Thursday, 19th of September at 11 a.m. in the cafeteria, lower level, Ajax Pickering Hospital. I hope I have the 19th correct. Thank you very much. The 24, in any event, is this Thursday. The 24-hour Bandathon musical event will commence at 7 p.m. on Friday, September 27th, and conclude on the following evening at 7 p.m. Location is Pickering High School. Our profound thanks to you, Mayor Ryan, members of council and staff, for your kind accommodation towards scheduling this presentation. May we ask for your official and unanimous endorsement. Thank you once again, and I'm available to take questions that you may want to ask. Thank you.
Cecil, thank you very much. And we don't have a resolution in front of us this evening with regard to the Bandathon, but I think you can count on the full support of every member of this council for the activities you and your fellow volunteers have undertaken, and we applaud you for your efforts. Thank you. And we wish
that
you
is sufficient.
every success. I know there are some questions. Councillor Dickerson?
Cecil, thank you for your presentation. I certainly echo the Mayor's words there, and I see Dinesh Kumar has joined us here as well this evening. Certainly on behalf of the Viridian Board of Directors, we are very proud to be able to sponsor this effort for you as well. Just a quick question. So far, your sponsorships, would you have any idea as to what those are totaling so far?
Yes, from the last meeting that we've had, and we meet every week on Tuesdays, the number on corporate sponsorships is totaling of about 15 to 18,000 currently, and that is gaining momentum as we speak.
Congratulations and best wishes for a successful event. I think you'll exceed your goals.
Thank you kindly.
Further? Being none? Oh, sorry, Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the delegation. Perhaps you could elaborate, as we've talked about, on the methodology of fundraising.
Yes. Basically, what we've done is that we're working with the hospital. We are a group of community leaders and a few lay people in there, very professional in their own rank. So what we have done is that we have leveraged on the broader community, our contacts, our friends, our relatives, the schools, and corporations, and every avenue that we know of in order to raise funds for this event. So we're all working very hard, and you know, it's paying off. So that basically is what it is, and the theme, actually the principle of this whole thing was born over the Bandathon, which is basically a a fundraiser that occurs over a 24-hour period with continuous music, song, dance, etc. And you know, there are people who would come forward to sponsor during this period of time, and that has worked very successfully in the past. You're welcome.
Thank you again for your presentation, for the good work. I look forward to the event.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. Good thing Mr. Ramnath knows the rules. There's a 10-minute limit on the delegations. You came in 2 minutes under, so thank you. Our next delegation this evening is the Junior National Dragon Boat Team, And when I saw them in the lobby, I welcomed them and told them that you were going to get better ratings tonight than The Amazing Race, but unfortunately we're not televised, but I still hold that you would have.
Mayor Ryan, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. The Canadian Junior National Dragon Boat team is here tonight to personally thank Pickering Council for their generous support in helping this team experience this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Tonight, the team is proudly wearing their Team Canada jackets and displaying their winnings. Only a few months ago, the Canadian Junior Dragon Boat team returned home from the 11th World Dragon Boat. Can you pause that? Thank you. Only a few months ago, the Canadian Junior Dragon Boat team returned home from the 11th World Dragon Boat competition in Sept, Hungary. They joined 29 other countries to compete in the Olympics of its sport. These young Canadians had the opportunity to compete on the Teesa riverbanks, as well as the world-class flatwater course, the Madier. After months of committed training, these young Canadians thrilled at the chance to represent their country, doing something they love. They did themselves and our country very proud, winning 7 golds, 5 silvers, and 1 bronze medal in the under-18 division. The team accomplished this feat against some of the world's best paddling countries, China, Hungary, Australia, and the Czech Republic. These unprecedented results allowed Canada to win its first ever Junior World Cup, an honor awarded to the team with the highest overall medal count in the under-18 category. There were 52 athletes from across the country which made up this junior team. However, the athletes from the Pickering and the surrounding areas helped play a Yes, that Rocky theme was the only other song that was played as often as our national anthem. In closing, I'd like to present to Council a photo of our team. And on behalf of the entire Canadian Junior Dragon Boat team, I want to thank Council for their generous support. Your support helps subsidize travel, uniforms, and registration costs. Your support enabled athletes from the Pickering area to proudly represent their country. We're forever grateful for your generosity. More importantly, these young athletes were great ambassadors for Pickering and Canada, always respecting and fostering good sportsmanship on and off the water. I'm proud to say that the world will be coming to us as Canada will be hosting the 2015 World Dragon Boat Competitions in Welland, Ontario. Thank you for your time.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And we don't usually allow applause or anything else in our chambers, but I think tonight it's a notable exception. And I was very pleased to stand with the rest of you and acknowledge these young people, their coaches, and all the volunteers and the parents that have done such a great job. And to all of you, you have represented your country and your city extremely, extremely well. And I was most gratified to see that you were proud of where you came from, not only displayed the flag of Canada, but displayed the flag of the city of Pickering in your team's shots. So thank you very much. All we can do is continue to encourage you and to wish you our best wishes and Godspeed as you move forward in whatever else you endeavor to do in your life. Thank you all very much. Any questions of the delegation? Being none, thank you very much for the photo. We will find a way to display it prominently so that others can share in the recognition you so richly deserve. Thank you very much. Our next delegation is Sylvia Spencer, who is here to just give the folks a chance to get out of the way there, Sylvia. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Ms. Spencer's delegation is on the official plan amendment dealing with the Pine Ridge Tower at 1473, 75, and 85 Whites Road. Welcome.
Thank you. Is the mic extra loud tonight, or is it just me?
I'm sorry?
I said, is the mic extra loud tonight, or is it just me?
Well, I can hear her, so that's good.
Are you sure you want to? Okay. Sylvia Spencer, 771 Shepherd Avenue East, Pickering, L1B, 1G4, Reed, Pine Ridge Tower Limited, zoning and official plan amendment application, OPA 12-001/PA1/12. Okay. On September 3rd, 13, I asked a lot of questions and received responses concerning the Planning and Development Committee's report about the Pine Ridge Tower. We still firmly believe it should be 8 to 10 stories of rental accommodation, and it should be a maximum for this site with no reduction in the parking spots at all. We've never had a problem with the handicap units, or to quote Councillor Pickles, geared to income units, unquote, just the height, lack of parking, and the noise issues. Northeast Quadrant Guidelines 3.5 in your report refers to shared access and coordinated internal access with a further amendment to, quote, be brought to Council for endorsement at a later date, unquote. Is that later date before or after the TriStar Management Corporation at number 760 and 770 Kingston Road, which comes in October 7th before yourselves? And we seem to recall the mayor being upset by the number of accesses, like there was 4 at the time on the TriStar, when they were presenting in September 4th, 2012 at the public information meeting. So does it mean that, quote, the reflected approvals granted since the adoption of the guidelines, unquoted, are not being altered to show the direct access from 401 West only at Bayfair Church to White's Road, and it's no longer possible due to an electronic gate at the Pine Ridge Towers? Or does it only refer to, quote, current direction and transportation planning for White's and Kingston's Road, unquote? I'm confused since we've had an OMB ruling on the Kings White property since 2002 and the Region of Durham easement on the old Dumbarton School site since November 2011. And are we only updating the Northeast Quadrant guidelines now? 3.12, Val Acoustics Canada Limited. I still haven't read it, but it says about appropriate warning clauses inviting tenants of potential noise concerning for the rooftop mechanical units on adjacent commercial plazas to the east. Bullock's Pub, for the record, is actually exhausting almost directly into the Pine Ridge Tower, proposed underground parking area from the west side of the pub's actual wall. And other restaurants in that area often leave us choking from a gray smoke that settles onto our property along with the grease. It's not acoustics, but it certainly is wind direction. And the Canadian Hearing Society has for years distributed a chart that gives 85 decibels of continued exposure to noise equals so many minutes of noise-induced hearing loss. An example, a rifle shot is 163 decibels, followed by fireworks at 162 if you stand about a meter away. We have a neighbor that literally fills our avenue with over 200 cars and gives a non-stop professional-style fireworks display during each summer for about the last 5 years on a holiday weekend for over an hour, solid, no break. This is like a professional job. It takes me 3 days for my ears to stop ringing, and I simply can't drive because I can't hear. A police ambulance or fire sirens that are 120 decibels on an average day, our exposure will be from 6 to 12 emergency responses at or through the White's Kingston Road intersection, and it comes bouncing back at us. The reason is the fire station is to the west, and the ambulance comes from the east. So we can't avoid it. We either get one or the other. General city traffic noise starts at 80 decibels for a common road and goes upwards with speed, street racing, revving of motorcycle engines, etc. All these sounds will be captured and bounced back to us in the northeast low-lying areas. Quote, there is also an air conditioner decibel reading, but unfortunately it's been temporarily removed due to a website updating, unquote. And that was as of 1 p.m. today when I called the Hearing Society. They are, however, going to put a package in the mail for me. I am needlessly frustrated, but the air conditioner, quote, hearing ratio loss, unquote, I believe is between 60 and 120 decibels, depending upon the unit's deteriorating age. I believe that answers the mayor's question he had the other week. Anyways, police helicopters are definitely quieter over the years, but at a radio station's traffic reporters in the sky plane, and we start hitting an echoing 130 decibel range. Also throw in the Toronto Island Airport, the International and Buttonville planes every 2 minutes, either overhead or within eyesight, and we go up very fast, another 10 to 40 decibels. Especially during special Toronto events like TIFF, CNE, Carabana, or any major sporting events like the Grey Cup, as the private planes and the group planes just start flying overhead, even in shorter time sometimes. I know. Why? Because bylaw told me to get a check meter 5 years ago, and I did, and I've been using it ever since. Probably at least one member of council here has visions of being mayor of Seton in the next few years, but trying to prove a point on the northeast quadrant lands, 22 acres, is a bit much. We have a 6-story apartment, 2 open creeks, 84 townhouses, 4 half-acre executive lots, a house of worship, 24-hour convenience and gas station, a group home that had a recent resident that was breaking into vehicles for coffee change, 7 single-family dwellings, 4 plazas, and 2 more plazas to come, at least. We are such a mess that the Durham Regional Police once told us it takes up 1 officer's complete time to service just our block, and that doesn't include the high school. So can we please tie the number of units to actual parking spots and not a 10% reduction for public transit? Otherwise, people will avoid this area altogether, and commerce, or city taxes, are going to suffer. Thank you. Oh, there is one other thing. I do have one copy. It is out of date, if you want it, of the noise decibel. I see a head shaking.
Feel free to leave it with the clerk.
Will do.
It'll be distributed. Thank you.
And I'll forward the new copies when they come in then.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions in delegation? Being none, thank you. Our next delegation is Eileen Higdon.
Your Worship, if I might, since the remaining delegations are here to speak on an item that has to do with myself, I intend to recluse myself from those delegations and the item, and would ask that you send someone to my office when those are finished, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Higdon? This is to do with Councillor Dickerson's appointments to Viridian and as Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, members of Council, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to express my support for Councillor McLean's motion to remove Councillor Dickerson from his role as Deputy Mayor and Chair of the Viridian Board. On a point of order, I just wondered if I'd have some clarification. Councillor Pickles, it's common knowledge that Councillor Dickerson's wife works for him, and I wondered if that put him in a conflict of interest. I wish to talk to Councillor McLean's motion. I refuse to be cowed and corrupted into believing the smoke and mirrors half-truths that the Mayor and local councillors have told us about Councillor Dickerson's abilities to perform his duties as Deputy Mayor and Chair of the Viridian Board. I believe they're anchored in deceit and questionable ethics. Their behaviour brings disgrace upon myself and the ordinary citizens of Pickering. After reluctantly pleading guilty to election irregularities, Councillor Dickerson blames the whole thing on timing and a badly written municipal act. Hear what I think is badly written, Councillor Dickerson, that a man with your vast political experience gets off with a slap on the wrist, not even pay your court costs, you get to remain on council, and allowed to continue in the once respectable post as Deputy Mayor, and receive over $56,000 last year as Chair of the Viridian Board. That's what I believe is badly written. It should be a privilege to be elected, not a gravy trough. I believe that the behaviour of the Mayor and local councillors Ash and Pickles is unconscionable and an abuse of their office as servants of the people. By not supporting Councillor McLean's motion to remove Councillor Dickerson as Deputy Mayor and Chair of the Viridian Board, they are surrounding Councillor Dickerson with an impenetrable block of votes, disgracing the ordinary citizens of Pickering who have followed the rules and laws and suffer the consequences. Loss of accreditation, loss of jobs, loss of a place on a sports roster, just to name a few examples. The behaviour of Councillor Dickerson and his supporting band reinforces the community's mistrust of politicians and allows politicians to believe they are above the laws of Ontario and Canada. A common response when I'm out talking to people on the street is, "I'm not surprised." Quite frankly, I'd like better. I am very surprised. I want better. Recently, I was a delegate before this council requesting certain questions be answered about the Viridian Annual General Meeting, as 4 out of our 5 Pickering councillors are Viridian board members. Councillors Ash, Pickles, Mayor, and is chaired by Councillor Dickerson. My request was denied. I'd like to ask them here tonight. Pickering has 5 members on the board. How much are they paid? Do they have expense accounts? How can we access the information? With 4 out of 5 Viridian board members elected officials, how can this be a reflection of the city of Pickering? Is there no room for a balance with business and community in our city? How are trips documented? The recent trip of the board's chair and vice chair to China? Is there no accountability to the taxpayer? Can I ever expect answers to any of my questions? A staff member did reply at the direction of the chair, Councillor Dickerson, but none of the questions about salary or expenses were answered. Should not the Viridian chair be more diligent and answer my questions to my satisfaction? In closing, I restate that it is not the Municipal Act that is badly written, Councillor Dickerson. It is that a man with your vast political experience gets off with a slap on the wrist, not pay your court costs, have us, the taxpayer, foot the bill, and you're allowed to remain not just as a member of our council, but also as deputy mayor, and in addition to your salaries and expenses for those positions, you draw over $56,000 last year as chair of the Viridian board. Unconscionable. That is what's badly written. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate...
But they're not ladies, they're just women.
I would ask you to respect the decorum of the chamber. It's there for good reason, and that I've already made the statement. Madam.
I lived here over 50 years.
Thank you. Questions of the delegation? Yes, we have one. Councillor.
Thanks, Ms. Higdon. You quoted a price of, or the remuneration that the chair of Viridian received. How did you get that information?
That's gossip. I asked for that information. I brought it here to council for that information. That information was never given to me. It is purely gossip.
Okay. Well, let me get rid of gossip because...
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I do not want to, live in gossip. I like truth, and that's why I came.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. The treasurer of our, I believe it's the treasurer, publishes all of our expenses, all of our remuneration for all the agencies that we sit on for the city in an annual report. I believe it's in March. It could be, I might be at a different time. So that's a public document.
And why could not have I been told that?
It's a public document.
Why could I not be? What is the name of the public document? I mean, these are nice, easy things that could be emailed to me.
I could get it in 5 minutes off our website. It's a public document.
Thank you. I'd appreciate the promptness.
Thank you.
Further? Councillor Pickles.
Just a point of order. The delegation raised a matter of whether or not I had a conflict of interest. I'd like to refer that through you back to the clerk or our solicitor.
Actually, Councillor, neither the clerk nor the city solicitor can advise you on your personal conflict of interest. You have to make your own decision.
Well, thanks.
And it's a point of privilege, not a point of order.
Well, I'll at least make it known that my wife, wholly in her name, has a small business, and Councillor Dickerson's partner is an employee of that business. I don't think there's a pecuniary interest there or a conflict. I would stand to be corrected by the clerk or the solicitor if they felt that there was.
Again, the clerk and the solicitor can't advise you, Councillor.
Okay. I don't see a conflict there.
Then
so
you don't see a conflict. Thank you. Further?
But I just wanted to clarify what the nature of the comment was.
Thank you. Further questions? Being none, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mike Borey.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor Ryan, for setting the tone, too. I do believe my presentation will be one that is happy and joyous, and I'm sure you will enjoy it very much. And again, thank you for setting the tone yourself. I'm happy to be able to speak to you and practice my democratic rights. The rights that for the past almost 3 years have been neglected within these walls. 4, we have not been able to stand up in here and talk about Councillor Dickerson's status with dealing with his court case. I believe Mayor Ryan has shut that down several times from other councillors that wish to talk about it. Just to give you a little bit of background, in 2010, we all know that Councillor Dickerson ran in Ward 2 in the municipal elections. And he won. He won in a democratic way. At least we thought it was a democratic way. We thought it was a fair and balanced playing field. It seems the playing field was tilted in the direction of Councillor Dickerson. I'll go on to try to prove that with the rest of what I have to say. He subsequently filed, as every candidate has to file, a financial statement about his campaign. After filing his financial statement, several residents of the city of Pickering stepped up, namely 3 of them, and disagreed with what was going on, disagreed with what the financial statement said, and it was brought to a special audit committee then. The audit committee says, yes, it was violated. Yes, he should be prosecuted. Although some of the councillors here disagreed with that. Dickerson appealed that audit committee decision, and he lost that also. All the while, the costs are mounting to the residents of the city of Pickering, the taxpayers that have paid every dime, whether it comes from a contingency fund or not. That fund was raised by the taxpayers of the city of Pickering. The audit report then went on and found that he was that Councillor Dickerson was in contravention of the MEA, which is the Municipal Elections Act, which is law within the province of Ontario. Finally, Councillor Dickerson pleads guilty, trying to end the court date, because I would suspect, my opinion, is that he viewed he could not win. He did not want the other 5 charges that were brought up any further in court, and did not want them to be voiced. Again, cutting down our democratic right to hear and speak. There's no need to really rehash all this, because it's well known that he pleaded guilty. It's well known now that it's cost the city of Pickering's taxpayers almost $300,000, which is 0.666%, coincidental, I guess, the 666. 666% of the total budget for this year within the city of Pickering. That's just under 1%, Mayor Ryan. He was guilty of exceeding campaign spending limit for 2010, which was $19,154 during the 2010 municipal election. He exceeded it by $2,909.65, or in excess of almost 15%. It wasn't just a slight excess of spending, it was a large excess of spending. He was guilty of an $11,500 payment to his common-law wife. He pleaded guilty. He was guilty of overspending by purchasing nearly $15,000 of booze that he decided to store away in his garage because he deemed the weather was not good enough to hold a party during the proper times. One may question whether $15,000 of booze is rightful to be used by any of the members of council. I can go on, but I guess you get the gist. Councillor Dickerson, on his own admission, pleaded guilty. guilty of running an unfair campaign, guilty of tilting the playing field in his favor. What is the council going to go on and do now? Is the council going to back up Mr. Dickerson? Is it going to make it seem like it's business as usual? Business as usual, as stated by Mayor Ryan. In my mind, it can no longer be business as usual as long as Councillor Dickerson sits at that chair. What is to be said to the other candidates that ran in the election? Since that playing field was uneven, what is to be said to them? What is it to be said of any further candidates that decide to run in the future elections, which are promptly coming forward? 2014, I believe it is. The expectations of residents, of their leaders. There's a lot of adjectives that can be used to express what a good leader is, and people that supposedly sit at these chairs up here are supposed to be leaders of our community. I would think that he has to have a strong sense of justice. He has to be a person that is honest. He has to have unquestionable integrity. Must be fair-minded, ethical, trustworthy. He must demonstrate a strong sense of humility, and he must be transparent in his activities. As a matter of fact, Pickering has a code of conduct. Thanks a lot to Mayor Ryan. And it states, attaining an elected position within one's community is a privilege which carries significant responsibilities and obligations. Members of council are held to a high standard as leaders of the community and are expected to become well informed on all aspects of municipal governance, administration, planning, and operations. They are also expected to carry out their duties in a fair, impartial, transparent, professional, and respectful manner. Many of the adjectives that I brought up what makes up a good leader. Councillor Dickerson would have us believe that he was guilty of violating MEA because it was unclear, ambiguously, and poorly written. Really? Councillor Dickerson, really? During the 2010 municipal elections, which comprised of 444 separate local elections in Ontario and thousands of candidates that filed audits, of those, are we to believe that they were all wrong and one man stand out as being right and ambiguous? Even all of you filed claims and were unquestioned. It's funny that so many other people interpret it as being one way and one person interprets it as being another. Really, Councillor Dixon? With your experience since 1978 of being in politics, you should know what the MEA says inside and out. How many times has he filed?
Excuse me, Mr. Boring, 1 minute.
How many times has he filed an incorrect financial statement? And how many times has Councillor Dickerson taken steps to change his MEA since then? What amendments has he proposed to the Ontario government? Has he stood up and said these changes should be done this way? I've heard nothing from him about making changes to this radical statement that is unclear and ambiguous. I can go on. Ignorantia juris non excusat. Ignorance of the law does not excuse, is what that means in a Latin term. He claims he didn't know. He claims he didn't intend to violate. What I would ask is...
Mr. Boring, I have to ask you to wrap up, please.
Okay, what I would ask, quite simply, and remember this when you vote tonight, and I hope it is a recorded vote, that one, he steps down from the Viridian Board.
Ask you to wrap up, please.
Yes, two, he steps away from being deputy mayor. 3, he resigns his seat in council. And 4, he repays $300,000 to the city of Pickering and the taxpayers of Pickering. Thank you very much.
Questions of the delegation? Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the delegation. Questions for clarification. Towards the end, you were mentioning about intent, and you're not a legal expert, neither am I, but when somebody breaks a rule, a law, a policy, and we're not arguing any legal matters here, but guilt is not a matter of intent. For example, if you're pulled over speeding, if you say, I didn't intend to speed, does that make a person less guilty?
Councilor,
in terms of common knowledge?
That's
to
not
clarify on the point you were making?
That's not for clarification, Councilor.
Yes, it is.
No, it's making an argument.
No,
Thank you, Mr. Borey.
No, Mr. Mayor. Question. Next question. No, question.
Next question.
I'd like to know if you could expand upon the point I couldn't quite get all of in terms of intent. What more can you tell me about intent, please? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I couldn't get into, my speech was much longer than that. My democratic rights are limited to 10 minutes. Intent is a degree of being guilty. Intent and guilt are two different terms in the presence of law. It remains still, no matter what your intent, whether you intend it or not, you are guilty. You can kill somebody, and the degree of being guilty would be your intent. Did I intend to kill him? Did I plan first-degree murder? Was it an accident? Did I not intend? Second-degree murder or manslaughter? But the fact remains you're still guilty. And to be a little bit more clear, intent is not an excuse to any form of being guilty. I hope that clears it up, Councilor Rodriguez.
I much appreciate the answer. Thank you. And that'll be my only question for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further? Being none, Mr. Borey, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Steele?
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'm here in support of Councillor McLean's motion. And to be quite honest with you, I am sick and tired of hearing that at all this time, Councillor Dickinson still believes that the Municipal Act is ambiguous and that he was right to give his wife $15,000 and put $15,000 worth of booze in his basement. I want to go into that booze thing. It's a bit of good spinning going on here. If you look at the filing of the paper, it said very specifically he spent $16,000 on his election party. He spent $1,500 on his election party, and the rest was rum or whatever in his house. And he says he was going to have a barbecue. Some $15,000 worth of booze. That's some barbecue. That money was the property of the City of Pickering according to the Municipal Election Act. Listen carefully. He had 3 times to say, I did wrong, I will give money to the clerk, and that would be the end of it. The second option, he went before Judge Bellefontaine to appeal an audit. He tried to divide the audit, interestingly, so that what he was found guilty of would not have been audited. Now, that's pretty smart, isn't it? And the judge, Bellefontaine, says he dismissed Dickinson's contention that the act was ambiguous in an elegant written statement towards the end of his judgment, dated December 21st, 2011, where it states that he considered the statute to present a coherent framework which leaves no ambiguity. That was the judge's ruling. He, the judge. Again, after that, anybody with some integrity would have said, that's it. The judge has ruled against me. But no, we have to carry on and carry on. And what we have to do is spend as much money, of the taxpayers' money we can, to the end. He could have said at that point, I'm wrong, there's the money, and that would have been it. Then we go to other things in the act that he broke. He didn't declare any election signs. He said he only spent a certain amount. He spent more than that on Bailey and Liverpool Road itself. So, and then there's more acts where he returned a check that he shouldn't have done. It was disgusting. And if he had the integrity to stand down after the judges ruling that there's no ambiguity in this act at all, it's current, it would have cost $20,000 to the city of Pickering in my calculations, which means we would have gained $10,000 out of all this exercise. But no, he continued his reckless agenda to try and prove that the act and Judge Belafontaine's ruling was wrong. That's what he did. This has resulted in the cost to the taxpayer in the city of Pickering approaching $300,000. Why should we continue to accept the services of this individual who has sought and determined his confidence in the government of the city of Pickering, which I am a proud resident to be a citizen of? Because if you as council continue to honour him with designation as Deputy Mayor, Chair of the Viridian Board, you are complicit with him in the dishonourable conduct he displays. What is it with Councillor Dickinson? With his arrogance, smiling tonight, laughing, he saw us coming in, laughing, his sense of entitlement, his lack of remorse. How dare he sit up there and make judgments on the issues before the city? Why has he not resigned? And to further that, the Municipal Election Act, I went down and I raised my opinion to the government of what I see wrong in the Act. If I and the two citizens said, no, this isn't right, he would have got through, he would have got his money, and nobody would have known any different. I went down and I said, this is wrong, because if we was wrong and the audit had come back that it was frivolous, we would have had to pay for the audit. And I'm sure you would have been voted for that. The Act, I could have been out $40,000. I took a lot of guts doing that, and so did the other two applicants. Because I know if we had been wrong, you would have been on our ass. And you know what? The sad thing of all this, you can spin it how you want afterwards. It's the Act, it's the law and all this stuff. The law was broken and pleaded guilty. But I speak to a lot of young people, and I was very proud of those young people here tonight. And I have won the cup 3 times in America with the soccer teams I had. It's a very proud moment. And I sit around with the citizens in my yard 2 weeks ago, young people, 40, under 30, 20, and they said they are so disgusted with politics from the Senate and down, they're not going to vote anymore. They're all crooks. We have to change it. We're losing our guidance in the democratic system. Mr. Dickinson knew what he did. He knew what he did wrong. He was surprised that 3 people pulled him up on it. And that's the end of my statement.
Questions of the delegation? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele, you're a businessman, or you work for a large organization. And if you had somebody under you that misread a contract or didn't have a full understanding of a contract and cost your organization
Exactly right.
$200,000, what would happen there?
Quite honestly, if it was anywhere else, you would be escorted to your car and you'd be fired, and you lose your pension plan and you lose everything unless you got a lawyer and try to fight for some of it. But we all know lawyers write laws for politicians, and they are the benefactor of any doubt. That's my interpretation of that.
The other question I had, sorry, Mr. Mayor. The other question I had is, you've been in this chamber many times, and you've heard Councillor Dickerson talk about running one of the most largest, successful, oldest business in Pickering. And so do you have any doubt about his expertise in managing businesses and budgets and making sure all the facts are correct?
I think he's very shrewd. I think he's a very shrewd man. And he knows it, and I know it. And I was waiting for 3 years to see if justice could be done. He knows how to run his carpet business. He knows how to get business. Hey, who gets $52,000 from developers? I mean, he's going to get it again. And why? How come we get $52,000 from developers every time he goes down there? What's he doing? I happen to have for your information, Bill, I happen to have a conversation with a gentleman who came to see me about this, and he ran against Mr. Dickerson many years ago and put him out of politics for a while. And he told me a few things, and, you know, I won't repeat them because I'm just disgusted. I'm surprised, Council as a whole, I really believe that in the democratic system we all have a right to speak and be heard. And you know, you can vote any way you want afterwards because they normally do. But when you have, I go to Ajax and I see they have, on the Viridian, they have council sitting half a term and the other council sit, they share it. Here it is, as soon as you're elected, which committee can I get on? I need 4 votes. And that's how they work it here. That's how they work it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. And against the law? No. But it's good money in the pocket. So anyway, I have nothing more to say. I leave you with it. Oh.
Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the delegation for clarifications. Thank you for coming forward and elucidating clearly. Just to be clear on what you said, 2 years ago, Justice Bellefontaine issued a report of 25 pages.
Yes.
And that was pretty clear-cut. Is that correct, what you're saying?
I thought it was a brilliant summary of his appeal was very good. There's no ambiguity, and it's a very clear law.
And a year and a half ago, when the Compliance Audit Committee met in this chambers for a 2-hour meeting, how do you, from your experience, assess that meeting as part of this case? Were they somewhat unclear? What can you tell me about that Compliance Audit Committee report by the 2 auditors, please? Thank you.
I think from the clerk up, I think a lot of people have learned a lot how the Act is formed. I think this is the only case that went as far as it did. There's no other politician that went on this particular type of municipal act violation. There's not one other I know of in Ontario. I thought the Compliance Audit Committee, they're selected by, I assume, the council. I assume they did what they could do within the Act. And there was only one step more to go, and that was trial. And that would have cost a couple of $100,000 more, most probably $100,000 more. I think the trial would have opened up a lot of things.
And if I can just continue to get specific clarification, I'm actually asking about not the Compliance Audit Committee, but the actual 2 outside auditors from the one company.
Oh, the two auditors.
Was there a report?
I mean, they did a job which is second to none. I think that was $17,000 of the best money Pickering's ever spent.
And was their conclusion somewhat unsure?
No, the conclusion was very clear. And as they sat in here over there and speaking over here, sorry, I didn't quite understand your question. They were getting, I think they were getting very frustrated of the answers that were coming from Mr. Dickerson's lawyer. But as far as competence, they were very competent.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further questions? Being none, thank you. Final delegation, Mr. Cumming, Ian Cumming.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I think my thunder has largely been stolen, and I'm not going to take up the time to rehash everything that has been said here tonight. When 3 citizens, and I was one of them, brought our concerns to this body and ultimately to the Audit Committee, I think at that particular point in time, had we received from Mr. Dickerson an admission that he'd made a mistake, that he was sorry for the mistake, if there had been some genuine acceptance of the fact that he had erred, I think it would have ended then. I don't think anyone wanted a fight. The election was over with. I ran against Mr. Dickerson and lost. I wasn't challenging the verdicts of the election, although someone who spends twice what he's allowed to probably should have been challenged, but I wasn't challenging that. But he could have saved the city one hell of a lot of money that night, but he didn't. I had citizens that said to me, "You won't get him. He's too slippery. You won't get him. Don't even bother trying. We've tried before and you won't get him." Well, I'm not sure if Mr. Dickerson thought that the complainants lacked determination, but we didn't. I'm not sure if the threat that financial recourse against us, he thought that would make us go away, but it didn't. What I was thinking as I was sitting back there tonight, I could almost have stood up. I almost felt like saying 70 years ago and 10, because it seems like that. It seems like we've been at this for a long, long time. But through this whole thing, all I've heard from Mr. Dickerson is the Act is ambiguous. The Act is not clear. Everyone's confused. If you read it, it says this, and then it says that. And, you know, if you keep saying something often enough, maybe somebody will believe it. But the facts of the matter are the Act is not ambiguous. I phoned the ministry. And I said, of all the other people who ran in Ontario, not got elected, who ran in Ontario, how many of them filed a report that showed they overspent? And remember, this was the first election in which any excess money raised was to be given to the city. At the end of the election, it was to be given to the city. Who goes out with a $19,000 budget and raises $15,000 and then spends it? Who's run in 13 elections before does that and then pretends he doesn't understand? One other gentleman in Ontario overspent and declared it as Mr. Dickerson did. It was $100. He went before a judge, he explained the situation, and the judge excused him, and everyone was happy. But not so Mr. Dickerson. So, as this process has gone on, as the different audits took place, you know, the auditor said in the report, which Mr. Steele mentioned a while ago, that in the middle of the report it says, his answers to some questions were not creditable. I think that's just a nice fancy way of saying, this man's not telling the truth. Then he went before, he appealed the audit, prior to that I should say, and I'm going to read to you what it says here on the last page of the Justice's comments. He said, I consider the statute to present a coherent framework which gives a purposeful interpretation and leaves no room for ambiguity. No room for ambiguity. And yet we keep hearing, well, we couldn't understand it. Everybody's confused. Everybody. The only people that were confused was Mr. Dickerson and his lawyer, and that was by choice. It was a good... You would expect anyone who is accused that doesn't want to be found guilty to plead not guilty, to fight it. That's their constitutional right. But there comes a point in time when you have to say, you know, this is costing too much money for me and for everybody else, and the decent thing is to say, you know what, I probably made some mistakes. I think he could have done that right up to the end, right up until the special prosecutor came along. I think had the special prosecutor taken him where he should have gone, and the Act does allow that he could have been kicked out of office, unfortunately it would have cost us more than $300,000. I suspect someone said, whoa, $300,000 already. Let's not keep doing this. Let's get the guilty plea. Very disappointing to see someone who claims to be always having the heart of Pickering on his mind and doing good. What was very disappointing, though, and I had discussions with several councillors, that after the audit that was paid for by this council, the independent audit, I was told by people in this council, well, you can't say he's guilty yet because he's got to go before the court. Who was in doubt? Who sitting out here was in doubt that he was guilty at that point? And why couldn't you see it? I think the only thing that was left was the sentencing. If that had been a finding on a pedophile, would you let him babysit your daughter? I don't think so. And yet we're letting him handle money for the city. We're letting him make decisions. We're letting him be on planning boards. It's disgraceful. And yet there seemed to be this little pocket that protected him. And I don't understand why. If he'd been a police officer, he wouldn't have been fired. He would have been paid. But he certainly would have been sequestered at some place in the police station where he couldn't do any more harm, where he wasn't out arresting people. If he'd been in any other civic job, he would have been quarantined until the verdict was in. If the people sitting up here tonight, any of them actually thought he was innocent when he knew he wasn't, then there's something wrong with your credibility. And I say that sincerely, and I don't say it to be rude. I think, you know, Pickering's had enough of this kind of politics. I think when the outcome was inevitable, Doug folded his tent and said it's time to admit it. But my God, he waited a long time. And every year he waited, he was deputy mayor, and he was strutting around telling everybody he's running half the city, and he was getting his 50,000 or whatever he was from Viridian, and he was being looked after by some members of council who refused to recognise there was anything wrong. I hope when Councillor McLean's motion comes up tonight, you think seriously when you vote, because I think that the elections are coming in 2014, we know, and I think we as citizens of Pickering have to question who would want to vote to keep Councillor Dickerson in those posts and who wouldn't. And remember that on election day. Because the same tenacity that kept us after him for 3 years will be after everybody. And I don't see that as a threat, it's just a fact. We'll be after everybody who's voting to keep that kind of incompetence on this city council. Thank you.
Questions, delegation, Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. Cumming. During your presentation tonight, you spoke to, I believe you suggested that you came to this body and we rejected, I don't want to, I'm trying to pose a question without paraphrasing what you said.
Okay.
I think you said you came to this body and we rejected your
No,
argument.
I'm sorry if I gave that, if that's what came out, then I apologize. Perhaps in the excitement of the moment, that was what I did say. I'm not sure. But let me be clear.
Okay, I'll give you that chance then. I'd like you to clear that up.
I was aware of several attempts on council to address the Dickerson situation, which were silenced. And the reason for silencing it was, we cannot discuss this, it's before the courts. I think you get to a point where common sense says, yes, it's before the courts, but let's do something about it. There didn't have to be a finding of guilty. There didn't have to be a time when you kicked him off council, but there certainly should have been some restrictions on what he was representing for this city. That was my opinion. Now, I did have some one-on-one conversations with some councillors who defended Councillor Dickerson quite vigorously.
Thank you.
But those were private conversations.
Thank you for that. You also put into the record a comment that of all the candidates across the province, all the elected officials, only one, I believe you said only one candidate?
According to the ministry,
okay,
only one other candidate completed an audited statement which they handed in showing an overage. And that gentleman, I believe, was the mayor of Niagara Falls. Now, that was at the time that I spoke to the ministry. Okay. There could have been some later appeals and some other things, so it could be as many as 2.
There's actually 3 in Toronto.
But we have to be clear. There were some that were contested on other grounds. I'm talking about someone who actually signed an audited statement that says, the rules say I can't overspend, and I overspent.
Well, 3 in Toronto are being pursued. So
yes.
Thank you for that.
Further questions? Councillor Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the delegation for clarification. Thank you for your lucid description. It was crystalline, but I still need a bit more information. Am I correct that you said Justice Bellefontaine, approximately 2 years ago, said there was no
ambiguity? I have his finding right here.
Could you just say that clearly again?
There was no ambiguity in the Act from his perspective. He thought it was a well-written Act and that it clearly laid out the do's and don'ts for those that are submitting filings under the Municipal Elections Act. So he did not see the ambiguity. Now, I was present again at another public meeting where Mr. Green, Dickerson's lawyer, said, Justice Bellefontaine said there was ambiguity. But as I said, just because you keep saying something doesn't make it true. I keep finding this, through this whole process, that Mr. Dickerson keeps writing checks with his mouth that can't be cashed.
And through you, Mr. Chair, to the delegation, do you have a kind of a financial background?
Me?
Yes. Audit, kind of.
I've run my own business for several years, and like everybody else who does that, I work for the bank and the tax department, but...
were you a bank inspector?
Well, yeah, a long time ago, my background is in IT, and I was, in fact, one of the first IT inspectors for the Toronto-Dominion Bank, but that's many years ago when my hair was dark.
Very good. And further, you were in attendance a year and a half ago, I believe it was May of 2012, when the seasoned veteran auditors were here and gave a report. What can you tell us about that report? Does that negate or enforce or what?
No, I mean, I've been around auditors a lot in my life, and someone once said you become an auditor when you don't have the personality to be an insurance inspector or something. Anyway, they're not the most exciting people. They don't lay things out in torrid language in their reports. But from an audit standpoint, that was the most scathing audit report I've ever read. And I've read a lot of them. And I've had lots of audit reports from the big auditors. I've been on many boards of public companies. Regrettably, I've been on some companies that didn't make it. And as you can imagine, the audit reports get pretty pointed at that point. But I've never seen an audit report quite that scathing. But again, that's in auditor language. You know, it's not going to read like a Mickey Spillane novel.
I appreciate that. I could ask a lot more questions, but I'll reserve it, and I thank you very much again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connell?
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Cumming. This was, you acknowledged that you ran in the last municipal election.
Right.
Was that your first?
Yes,
election?
it was.
And so your first time with the Municipal Elections Act and your first time filing as a candidate, you did file your expenses.
Yes.
Assuming, or sorry, first of all, as a new candidate, were you invited to, or as a candidate, I should clarify, were you invited to Municipal Elections Act kind of meeting, orientation,
To have it
101,
explained
if
to
you
me.
will?
Well, to be honest, I was. I actually signed up to run on the very last day that you could do it at 2 o'clock. And yes, the invitation was made. I was busy. I didn't make it. And I will confess that Madam Clerk very kindly assisted me a little bit. Mr. Dickerson spent, I don't know, what was it, 50,000? I spent 2.
Right.
So there was my submissions were very simple, and as such did not have to be audited. I got in at the last minute. I've never run for anything or any public office before. It was a last-minute decision. So was I good at it? Not particularly, but I got some help, and for that I'm grateful to.
But there was a session available.
There was a session available, as I believe there is to everyone who runs.
Thanks. And whether you spent $2,000 or $50,000, the form that everybody fills out is the same, correct? You've seen them all.
The form is the same, and it's pretty clear on there. If you underspend, that's okay. But if you have any money left at the end in that last election, it goes to the city.
And in terms of the actual Elections Act legislation in regards to the filing, let's assume you didn't read it, and I say you generally. Let's assume the candidate doesn't read it or doesn't fully understand it 100% because it's still, at the end of the day, legislation and is written like legal jargon. The forms you fill out, do you recall that they were specifically categorized as part of election, what's counted towards the allowable spending limit? Do you recall sections where it shows signs from previous elections, signs for future elections?
Yes.
So it's broken down to the point where you really are filling in the blanks based on the information.
It really is a 101 form. It's election accounting for dummies. Yes.
So even though it was your first election, you knew where to put the fund or where to put the information as you spent it.
And I did have to ask. The clerk for some clarification on a couple of points, and she was kind enough to give it to me. I brought the form in. We spent a couple of minutes going over it. She pointed out any errors or assumptions I had made that were wrong, but I certainly was well aware of the penalty phase of it, of not reporting stuff, not recording stuff, money that you'd raised, and putting it in the wrong box. Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further? Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I take it you had no problem with reading the Election Act. You were pretty clear on what you had to do. You just had to get some minor
Yes. I mean, there wasn't. It's not a mystery.
And you're aware that the previous election, Councillor Dickerson had a $10,000 surplus.
Councillor, that's...
Are you?
Councillor?
Well...
Do the as you are aware, and that's not for clarification.
Okay, that's fine. Okay,
right?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I answer that question?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Further questions? Being none, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Members of council, that concludes our...
I'm going to move to suspend the rules of the agenda and bring forward the second notice of motion,
Thank
given
you.
that Councillor
Second that.
Dickerson has noted a conflict and is out of the room. We might as well deal with it now.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I wanted to suggest. So moved and seconded by Councillor O'Connell and McLean that we suspend the rules and move the item B under notice of motion forward. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Just for clarification of the record, Councillor Dickerson did not declare an interest. He did absent himself from the proceeding. The motion that I have in front of me, moved by Councillor McLean, seconded by Councillor O'Connell. Whereas subsequent to the public release of the 2010 municipal election financial statements, the City of Pickering received several requests for an audit of Councillor Dickerson's election finances. The independent and provincially mandated Ontario Municipal Elections Act Compliance Committee for the City of Pickering met to review the audit requests made by residents of Pickering and ultimately ordered a full audit of Councillor Dickerson's 2010 election finances. And whereas Councillor Dickerson appealed to the Compliance Audit Committee's decision for an audit of his 2010 election finances, on December 21, 2011, Justice P.L. Bellefontaine released his ruling on the audit appeal filed by Councillor Dickerson's attorney. Justice Bellefontaine agreed with
Motion
the
to
Compliance
dispense?
Audit Committee's... No seconder. Whereas in May 2012, an independent audit reviewed Councillor Dickerson's 2010 election financial statement and found numerous contraventions to the Ontario Municipal Act, and whereas on February 27, 2012, Councillor Dickerson was charged with 5 offences under the Ontario Municipal Elections Act on behalf of the City of Pickering's Compliance Audit Committee, and whereas on July 19, 2013, Councillor Dickerson pled guilty to the Ontario Municipal Elections Act violations for his 2010 municipal election, which ultimately cost the taxpayers of the City of Pickering approximately $266,000 in audit and legal fees, and whereas the City of Pickering's Council Code of Conduct Policy Objective dated March 2012 is intended to complement the oath of office sworn by each member of Council of the City of Pickering. The Council Code of Conduct Policy Objective reads with the following. Members are committed to performing their duties of office and arranging their private affairs in a manner that promotes public confidence in the integrity of each member and respect for Council as a whole. Members are committed to acting and being seen to act with integrity and impartiality that will bear the closest scrutiny. Members are committed to avoiding waste, abuse, and extravagance in the provision and use of any of the city's resources. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the City of Pickering acknowledges the Ontario Municipal Election Act violations committed by Councillor Dickerson and therefore rescinds his appointment as Deputy Mayor and Viridian Representative for the City of Pickering. And therefore, the clerk be directed to make the appropriate arrangements for Council to appoint new representatives for any and all vacancies as a result of the passing of the above resolution. Councillor McLean is the mover.
Point of order.
Point of order.
I have a question of the clerk in regards to the legality of the appointment of the deputy mayor by bylaw and the appointment of persons by a bylaw to agencies. I'm wondering if you could give me a ruling on rescinding motions, reconsideration motions, what the proper process would be to do that.
The 2 appointments in question are appointments that are made at the beginning of each term, and the only bylaw that is attached to those appointments is the confirmatory bylaw. The boards and committee policy notes that council can make changes to those appointments at any time, and this is not a reconsideration because it's not the original motion. It has new information attached to it.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for reading that out. You did a good job. Often when we bring motions to council, we start off by saying it's a pleasure to bring this motion forward. In this particular case, it does not and is not pleasurable to do so, but it is necessary. There will be members tonight who will say that this motion is pure politics and grandstanding. Grandstanding it is not. Politics it is. This is the politics of accountability and transparency and maintaining a level of confidence in the public about their elective representatives. The public expects and demands that we as councillors hold ourselves in a much higher standard. As noted in our previous code of conduct that was in place prior to the 2010 election, it stated, "A member must discharge with integrity all duty owes to council, the City of Pickering, and the public." Mayor Ryan formed a task force comprising of members of the community, the public, business people, to put together a code of conduct to govern council and to ensure that council has rules in place that we are accountable for our actions. Mayor Ryan picked Councillor Pickles to help with the final draft and the implementation of this code and to bring it to council. I'm pleased to say this code was adopted and passed by the majority of council. The code states in part, all members of the Council of the City of Pickering are committed to protecting and promoting the well-being and best interests of the citizens of the City of Pickering with the highest standards of integrity and ethical conduct. This code is an affirmation of this commitment. It recognizes and is based on the following key statements of principle. Members are committed to perform their duties of office and arranging their private affairs in a manner that promotes public confidence in the integrity of each member and respect for council as a whole. Members are committed to acting and being seen to act with integrity and partiality that will bear the closest scrutiny. Members are committed to ensuring that their actions are open and transparent to the greatest possible extent. This motion addresses your commitment to our code of conduct and to instill faith in our community that will make the right decision and abide by our code. This motion is a first real test as to whether we are serious about accountability and transparency and the ability as council as a whole to hold ourselves accountable for our actions and that of our colleagues. If we do not, we might as well tear up this code of conduct. Deputy Mayor Dickerson is no stranger to the election process. He's run 13 campaigns and is probably the most knowledgeable member of council when it comes to elections. Deputy Dickerson is a master of fundraising and has had a surplus from the previous election of $10,000 that was allowed to be carried forward to the 2010 election. I think it's important to note that the 2010 election was the first election where election money that was a surplus to a candidate's spending limit had to be turned over to the clerk of the city if it wasn't used. The deputy mayor had a spending limit of $20,000 and he had raised $50,000. That's $30,000 more than what he was allowed to spend. He reached and exceeded his spending income way prior to the election being taken place, but he continued to raise funds. Deputy Dickerson was quoted in the News Advertiser July 24th when responding to a police investigator, his words, "In his mind, no reasonable person alive would give money back to any level of government if they could avoid it." This statement speaks volumes, and in my mind, shows that the Deputy Dickerson thought this money was his and that he had raised it and to spend it as he saw fit, rather than returning 1 cent to the clerk as he was lawfully duty bound by, according to the Municipal Election Act. Deputy Dickerson spent $30,000 by buying 288 bottles of alcohol at a cost of $14,595 for a victory party that he never had. He had a smaller election night party, as was mentioned. Paid his wife $11,050 for recording a few sign locations. Gave his grand stepdaughter and another relative $2,000 for helping out also. The auditor, William Molson and Bernard Naiman, stated in their findings that, quote, "This action had an effect of diverting to the candidate a surplus otherwise payable to the clerk." That's the auditor. He diverted money that should have gone to the clerk to his own use. Deputy Mayor Dickerson maintains that the act was ambiguous and the language was confusing. We've heard tonight how confusing that was. The News Advertiser editorial of March 21st, 2013 asks the following question. What about his own responsibility as a councillor? If he had doubts, he should have checked and cleared up any ambiguities. Heck, he could have contacted the province like some of our other people did. Or he could have spoke to the clerk. Apparently, he did not. The Municipal Election Act states in section 67(1), for the purpose of this act, cost incurred for goods or services by or on behalf of a person, wholly or partly for use in his election campaign, are expenses. Seems pretty clear to me. Section 67(2) provides in part that without restricting the generality of section 1 that I just read to you, the following amounts are expenses. The cost of holding parties and making other expressions of appreciation after the close of voting. How much clearer could it be? If a candidate is not sure, ask the question. Not a first-time candidate, 13 elections, new act. I know I called the clerk. I'm sure other members called the clerk. Ontario Court of Justice of the Central East Region addresses Deputy Mayor Dickerson's assertion that the act was ambiguous. His Honour Justice Belafonte clearly states that he considers the statute to present a coherent framework, which gives a purposive interpretation and leaves no ambiguity. Councillor Dickerson refuses to admit and take responsibility for his actions, which caused the city to enter into a long, drawn-out process that cost the taxpayers. I'm going to correct some of the members out there. It wasn't $300,000. We get our HST and GST back. So the net was $265,000. He's quick to point a finger at everybody else for his deeds and blames everything on his misinterpretation of clearly defined rules as mentioned by the judge and the editorials and the auditors. If this council does not take some action, then the message to other politicians is very clear, that they can get away without being accountable. It would equally be very clear to the taxpayers that politicians are held to a different standard and that they have a sense of entitlement and immunity. This motion is not here to take a run at Councillor Dickerson. This motion is here because a number of people that I've spoken to, and I'm sure other members have spoken to, are sickened by what's happened here. This motion is very simple. I know for the appointment of the Deputy Mayor, Mayor Ryan, Councillor Ash, Councillor Pickles, and Councillor Dickerson voted to have him as a Deputy Mayor, and they voted for the Viridian appointment. I'm hoping that all members of Council will support this motion. Thank you very much.
Further discussion? Councillor Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will, for once, be quite succinct. I often say that, and I'm not. But Councillor McLean, I'm so glad he brought this motion forward with the seconding of Councillor O'Connell. And it's not by any plot or planning. It's just independent thinking, reaching a similar conclusion. I must say I'm extremely disappointed in Councillor Dickerson. My personal view. I'm embarrassed when people on the street ask me, what's going on? It's been in the newspaper 15, 20 times. It's been going on for 3 years. And every time I tell people, well, what he says is, it was unclear. It's subject to interpretation. It's confusing. It wasn't his intention. I always give him that benefit of the doubt because everyone has that right. And this is not about Councillor Dickerson. This could be any member of council. If this came up, I would feel the same way. And if it happened to me, I'd want you to all do the same way and think clearly. Because I'm embarrassed on the street. And even though I didn't do it, it casts aspersions on all council members to have this come up. And it's not just the people in this chamber. There's all over Pickering, I hear this. It's just so shocking. And what strikes me is it's overwhelming the case. Now, every person has a right to their opinion. They have a right to say what they want, to deny things, to have a lawyer, to go to court. That's an absolute right, and I think it should be upheld. It's absolutely essential. But in the face of overwhelming evidence, not just is subject, not was close, unambiguous. I was here for that 2-hour meeting, not as a participant, because this whole thing was outside of the council. We didn't have a say on anything. It was the Compliance Audit Committee chosen before this term, chosen by the previous council. 3 members of the public were the Compliance Audit Committee. And I was here for the 2-hour meeting, and when the 2 accountants were here, Auditor Molson and the other gentleman, they've done 5,000 audits. They were overwhelmed absolutely by what had gone on. I would also tell you, the man in the street, the woman in the street, would be equally overwhelmed. It took my breath away. And I understand people could be confused, but at a certain point, you got to say, maybe I'm wrong. When the entire province, I did mine fine, first time out. It's not that hard. You fill in the blanks. I won't go on. My breath is just taken away from me. I'm just so disappointed in what's gone on. And lastly, I do want to really thank the 3 members of the public who came forward. They risked substantial cost to themselves personally, because they said, if you folks are bringing this up frivolously, or if you're not serious about this, it's going to cost you money for what the city has to expend, what Councillor Dickerson has to spend. They were subject to spending a lot of money out of their own pocket, but they were persistent, they were diligent, and thank goodness, and they had the tenacity to last for 3 years. I couldn't have believed this could go on for 3 years. And when did Councillor Dickerson decide he was guilty? July 19th. The auditors came here May of last year, a year and a half ago. Well, there's been no new facts since then, and the costs have just been mounting and mounting and mounting and mounting. We could do so much with $300,000 or $250,000. So I'm just so fraught with frustration over this whole process, and if I can't see the rest of the council finally agreeing with this, then it really makes me question things too. And that's all I have to say, and I thank you very much.
Further questions, discussion? Councillor Pickles?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to speak to the motion. And first of all, I'd like to say that I appreciate and respect everybody's right to provide their views here this evening. The ones who spoke, the ones who didn't speak, some of whom I've spoken to, and all members of council. It is a difficult evening. It's been a difficult and it's been a long process. I'm not going to give my opinion on how easy or difficult forms were to fill out, who could interpret the law in different ways and all that. There's been a process that occurred, and there was a guilty plea, and the courts dealt with that matter. But I'd like to just step back a second and talk a little bit about the process. The municipal elections financing process is guided by legislation. It was put together, passed by our representatives at Queen's Park, and it's a matter of law. In their wisdom to deal with municipal finance issues, they put in place an independent process, a process that's not governed by council, a process that council, as other members of council have pointed out, appointed an audit committee. Complaints are made by individuals, residents of the municipality. I think it's restricted to residents of the municipality, but I'm not sure. They can come forward, they can make complaints. That's heard by the audit committee. The audit committee can then determine whether there's going to be a charge laid or not, and they do that in discussion with auditors and with legal counsel. If a charge is made, then the next step in the process is a prosecutor is hired and the charges are pursued, and there could be a trial by judge or I suppose a trial by jury. I'm not a lawyer, don't know all the details of that. But I want to emphasize that the people we elected at the provincial legislature put in place a law that puts in place an independent process. So why would they put in place an independent process from council? And I would suggest that is to be fair, unbiased, and transparent. You don't want a process that has your fellow colleagues on council judge and penalize you with respect to any wrongdoings that occurred through the municipal financing. You want a fair, unbiased, independent process to do that. That's what's in place. That's what was set up. That's what was followed. That's what unfolded. A lot of people have commented this evening that during this long process, some members of council didn't speak or didn't bring forward motions, and some members of council did bring forward motions that other members of council or the clerk ruled out of order or didn't support. Myself and other members of council spoke to the clerk, and the clerk always gives great advice. I have to say the clerk gives good advice. Sometimes we follow it, Madam Clerk. Most of the time we follow it, sometimes we don't. That advice, much like Mr. Cumming had spoke to earlier, said you ought to stay away from commenting on an independent process. It's supposed to be independent. You're not supposed to be here speaking about that process, perhaps interfering in that process, adding bias to that process. That's an independent process. You should let it take its course. I followed that advice for the most part. A couple times matters came up that I spoke to, and I did speak to a number of residents, and I spoke to Mr. Cumming as well. In fact, we had is he still here? We had a couple spirited exchanges on the matter, I would say. And he's a very well-spoken individual. We didn't agree on everything we spoke of. I think maybe we agreed on a few things, and we agreed at some point we'd go out for a coffee and talk about the rest. We haven't done that yet. But that independent process unfolded. People have the right to the rule of law. They have a right to have their day in court, to a fair, unbiased, transparent process. So I'm not going to second guess the prosecutor. I think Mr. Cumming said he didn't agree with the prosecutor. The prosecutor should have went to court and got a greater penalty. I'm not going to second guess that. I'm not going to second guess what a lot of people have said here this evening, that their view, interpretation of the law, what they think ought to happen, what they think the penalty ought to have been. The fact is there's a process. It's independent of this council. It should remain independent of this council. A conclusion was come from that day in court, and I don't think we should be sitting here this evening second-guessing what that legal process was and what that decision was.
He's guilty.
Excuse me, that's enough. We've put up with the applause. We're not going to have council heckled. Thank you.
So a number of people have made the comment here that the councillor is guilty. In fact, he pleaded guilty. That was part of the process. That was part of the process. There was a penalty. Mr. Mayor, I wasn't speaking out. We're talking about democracy. I wasn't cutting anybody off or speaking out when anyone else here this evening was speaking, and I would appreciate the same courtesy. So a number of people have said, have yelled out that the councillor is guilty. The councillor pleaded guilty. I got a headline here. I guess it's out of the Metroland paper. And a number of people talked about, well, the member should be penalized, or hasn't been penalized, or something ought to be done, and he ought to resign, or he ought to lose his seat on Verdian or his seat on deputy mayor.
Yes, overwhelming.
So let me just read from the caption on the headline here. Pickering Councillor Doug Dickerson left the Oshawa Courthouse after pleading guilty, was subject to the legal process, pleaded guilty, on 2 counts of campaign finance violation. Talking about penalties. He was ordered to pay $17,500 in fines as penalty and will also pay back nearly $30,000 in campaign expenses. So after this lengthy independent process, the audit committee, charges, prosecutor, the opportunity to go to court or go to trial, a plea guilty was bargained. And this is the result of that. And I think, Mr. Mayor, that everybody ought to, here this evening, ought to think that when we call for justice, when we call for fair, unbiased, transparent processes, that's what occurred. The member pleaded guilty. The member was penalized. The prosecutor or whoever else was involved in the process didn't apply other penalties. But he had his day in court, and this was the result of that court. And I think we have to look at ourselves and say, are we in a contradiction here when we say we want a fair, justice, and transparent system? That's what was put in place, and that is what was followed. But now some of us don't like that process, or don't like the results of that process, or don't agree with the prosecutor, or don't agree with the penalty. And what should be done? Well, maybe council should bring forward a motion and undertake the review and dispense its own penalties and justice. And I would say, Mr. Mayor, that that's the very reason the provincial legislature put in place the laws of the land, the process that was to be followed in cases of municipal financial wrongdoings, was to avoid the very situation that we turn around and doing this evening. I think it's a great contradiction. And I'm going to say, from my perspective, this isn't about a person, because I've told Mr. McLean this the other day, that if anybody else went through that process, whether they were candidates or whether they were actually elected and sitting here, I would, on the principle of law, on the principle of a fair, just, and transparent system, likewise not support a motion against any of those other candidates or any other member of the council here who has already had their day in court and has already had a verdict on them. That's the conclusion of my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion? Councillor O'Connell?
Thank you. Well, I think a lot has been covered by my colleagues, so I will try and not repeat anything, but some things I think are worth repeating in some instances. You know, we're accused of being political or grandstanding, and trust me, I have heard that almost every day of my political career, that I'm grandstanding. And I will take that to the grave when I'm fighting for the community and fighting for what's right. I don't care if anyone calls me grandstanding or being politically motivated. I know what I'm doing is based on what I believe is right and what is good for the community. As far as, I want to go over just a couple of things that have happened. You know, people say that it's political, but I wonder, was it political when Councillor Dickerson signed his name to the financial report showing he was over budget or spent more than he was allowed? Was it political when Councillor Dickerson spent $14,500 in booze for a barbecue that didn't happen, and mind you, no food for said barbecue? Was it political when Councillor Dickerson paid his wife over $11,000 and she said, "I wasn't expecting it, it was a little treat"? Was it political when Councillor Dickerson appealed the audit and lost? Has any member of council sitting here today had anything to do with Councillor Dickerson's actions other than Councillor Dickerson? Who has brought this on for the last 3 years? Certainly not I. I did not raise $30,000 over my known spending limit. You know, the issue remains in terms of what do we do next? The councillor's had his day in court. The process has unfolded. It was independent. I certainly was not involved, other than as a spectator, as many people in these chambers were. But that process took place. And to kind of follow up where Councillor Pickles left off, there's no question the process took place. I'm not, frankly, upset with the guilty plea. I mean, it was a long time coming. I would have preferred that it didn't cost the taxpayers $265,000 when he realized he was guilty. But I'm not trying to rewrite what happened. But this council, like for everything else we do, the province is our parent. And there's legislation. But within that legislation, we have powers. And in this particular case, we have a code of conduct that this council created and approved. So we have an ability to look at, now that the process has happened, the guilty verdict is in, what do we do? Do we turn a blind eye because he was fined $47,000 while taxpayers are fined $265,000? Does that seem like a reasonable expectation to do? Should we just move on and not question anything? Perhaps I would be okay to move on if, for one thing, there was a little bit of humility and remorse from the counselor in question. But what I read in his retail pages, defending to this day, after pleading guilty, that it still wasn't his fault after he cost the taxpayers that much money, how am I supposed to move on when the counselor hasn't? And, you know, I think at the end of the day, we are elected to represent this municipality, to do so in a way with integrity. I mean, how many times is that word thrown around our code of conduct? And it's not done so lightly, for very good reason. So we are supposed to, frankly, Councillor Rodriguez brought it up, but I'm embarrassed when you go and you meet other councillors or people in the community, and their first thought is, oh, you sit on that council with that councillor that pled guilty to elections fraud? That's what they think of this council. That's what they talk about in the public. It's a laughingstock, and we're supposed to be held with integrity. And the stink of political corruption sticks to all of us if we allow it. And I guess the last, point or area that I'll cover is this notion of that Councillor Dickerson was confused by the act. Fine, I will accept that he was confused by the act. I don't know why one person gets confused over the other. I can't pretend to know what went through his head. But by his own guilty admission of confusion, then that gives me the right to feel that he's not capable to be chair of Viridian or deputy mayor. I'm comfortable accepting his guilty plea and moving on, but that does not leave us without a responsibility to think about his capacity of these roles. The court system has no jurisdiction in the appointment of a deputy mayor or Viridian representative. That is solely our decision. And that's what's being debated here tonight. Nowhere in our motion does it talk about penalty for his guilty plea or violations of the Municipal Elections Act. It's about appointing the right person for these positions. And what does it say when I'm paying my Viridian bill, and I sit there and I wonder, gee, is this really the right amount I should be paying? Or was the chair confused? Will I be expecting a rebate, or was he confused with some big deal that's now costing me as a utility user? As a deputy mayor, speaking on behalf of this municipality, in China, I hear, in other municipalities, am I going to worry? Is he confused? Is he acting in our best interests? Are we going to be on the hook for something that will cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars again? That, to me, is the only decision here tonight. It's fully within our purview. In fact, it's our responsibility to put into place representatives that will not be confused by legislation when making important decisions on behalf of this municipality. He can be confused about the Municipal Elections Act. That's his prerogative. The courts have dealt with it. He's been fined. But when it comes to my vote for a deputy mayor representing this city, and when it comes to my vote as a representative on Pickering, who is the largest shareholder in Viridian, a multi-million-dollar corporation of which we rely on the dividends every year to come in and fill our budget. Not fill, but contribute to our budget. We rely on those funds so that the community pays less taxes, and they paid for it with the initial investment into Viridian. So I don't care that Councillor Dickerson has been through the courts. He's been found guilty, and he's continued to profess his confusion with legislation. And at the end of the day, I'm not confused that I don't want him representing this municipality as our deputy mayor and chair of Viridian. There is too much on the line. And I urge all members of this council, if you truly want to be non-political, then please ask yourself the question that if any other member of this council, mainly on this side, had been found guilty of fraud, you're telling me, honestly, that you wouldn't be demanding for our heads. You wouldn't be demanding that we be stripped of any positions possible. So if you want to really be non-political and not grandstand, you'll do the right thing, because find me a resident in this municipality that thinks committing elections fraud is worthy of being deputy mayor and chair of Viridian, and I'll ask for a recorded vote.
Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wasn't sure if I was going to speak tonight because of the conflict that happens among us, and that's when people talk about being embarrassed about being on council here because of the actions of one, in this case, as suggested. I'm actually embarrassed because of the conflict that we have among ourselves, and I don't think this motion tonight helps in that reconciliation. I didn't use the word grandstanding, and I won't use the word grandstanding because I believe that the councillors that brought this forward, it's their true belief, and I respect that. They also have to respect people that have a different view. Councillor Dickerson erred in his interpretation of the Act. He's acknowledged that fact, and in fact, he's apologized for that. Sometimes people can't take yes for an answer, but that's the reality. The independent prosecutor confirms these facts, and he suggested that the apology and the acknowledgement of their facts were significant enough to deal with a remedy, and that remedy was the acceptance of a guilty plea. There was also other remedies that were available to the court, and that was including losing his seat, fines, paying back the money, et cetera, et cetera. And the consequences of Councillor Dickerson's actions are significant already, and I don't condone them. I thought it was an error in judgment that we've gone this far, but I also have deep concerns about the provincial legislation that allowed this municipality to spend about $300,000 with no oversight, no authority, no accountability, just a bill to the taxpayers. And that's independent of who it was or what it was. I just think the province should look at that in terms of having a mechanism that there is some oversight. Some people have indicated tonight that we should kick them off or we should resign. But the reality is the court's made a judgment, and it is independent. And some delegates tonight suggested that our votes will be remembered next year. And I'm comfortable with every one of my votes, that people can judge if they're appropriate or not, including the one I'm about to take. Because I truly believe that the ultimate adjudicator are the people, and that they'll get that decision next October, and I'm comfortable with any verdict that they give me. Thank you.
Thank you. Recorded vote requested by Councillor O'Connell.
On the recorded vote, Councillor O'Connell?
Yes.
Councillor Pickles?
No.
Councillor Rodrigues?
Yes.
Councillor Ash? No. Councillor Dickerson is absent from the vote. Councillor McLean?
Yes.
Mayor Ryan?
No.
Motion is tied and lost.
Call for a 5-minute break, Your Worship.
The only thing I would like to know is what he has on Mayor Ryan.
5-minute break requested. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. See you in 5 minutes.
Yeah. And then we'll have to take it up on 30. I knew it was going to happen.
Stamp that on my forehead.
Tattooed.
So thanks for saying that. We try to be. Yeah. We try to be, for sure. I better go back. We're getting there.
Madam Clerk, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. The
Move
committee
the planning.
reports.
Oh, sorry. Move the planning report.
Planning moved by Councillor Pickles, seconded by Councillor McLean. Items to be pulled. Councillor Rodrigues.
Item 4, page 76. Sorry. Please pull item 4, page 76 to 99.
No, in tonight's agenda. Item 4 being the wind mobile.
Yes.
Okay, and the other one? Is that it?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. On the balance, all in favor? That's carried. Wind mobile. Councillor Rodrigues.
I won't drag it out. I'm opposed. Recorded vote.
Thank you. Recorded vote requested on item 4 of planning.
On the recorded vote, Councillor Rodrigues?
No.
Councillor Ash?
Yes.
Councillor Dickerson?
Yes.
Councillor McLean?
Yes.
Councillor O'Connell?
No.
Councillor Pickles?
Yes.
Mayor Ryan?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you. Executive.
I'll move that.
Moved by Councillor O'Connell.
Second it.
Seconded by Councillor Pickles. Item to be pulled. Being none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Reports, new and unfinished business. Item 1.
I'll move it.
Moved by
Second it.
Councillor O'Connell. seconded by Councillor Ash. This is Director's Corporate Service City Solicitor Report. Finance 2013 to... Oh, all three moved by Councillor O'Connell. Councillor Ash, seconding? Yeah, okay, all three moved and seconded by Councillors O'Connell and Ash. These are the three items dealing with the approval, financing, and tendering of the indoor soccer facility. I'm sorry? And Toinville, sorry, and Toinville, correct. Discussion being none, all in favor? That's carried. We're moving forward with the soccer facility and Toinville. Thank you.
I'm more excited about Toinville.
Okay, notice of motion. Moved by Councillor McLean, seconded by Councillor Rodrigue. Whereas the residents...
Motion to dispense.
Moved by Councillor McLean to dispense. Seconder? Seconded by Councillor O'Connell. All in favor? That's carried. No, it's to dispense the reading. Just dispense the reading. Okay. This is a motion that will ask staff to undertake a traffic study with regard to areas in Maple Ridge at Harvest Street, Fieldstone, and Petalstone Court. Discussion. Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Worship. I absolutely have no problem supporting the motion. My concern is this, and perhaps you or staff can answer it. Clause 3 says that staff report back to council as soon as practical with summary of their investigation, including the proposed bylaw for the placement of new sign locations. My concern with that is we've asked staff to investigate, but we've presupposed the answer.
Yeah.
And again, I don't have any problem if that's the remedy that's proposed to us. I just don't think we should presuppose the conclusions of a staff investigation. So
I'll take that as a friendly amendment, Councillor, if you want to put if any at the end of that. New stop sign locations, if any.
Including a proposed bylaw for the placement of new stop signs, if any?
Yes.
And take out locations?
Yes.
Is that okay,
that's fine.
Councillor?
I just didn't want to presuppose the answer.
Councillor?
I was just going to say, I don't think it presupposes it, because it just says here for staff to come back and tell us, and their answer could be 0 or 5 stop signs or whatever it might be.
Not the way it's currently worded. It says specifically, including a proposed bylaw for the placement of new stop sign.
Bylaw could be for 0 stop signs.
Again, does staff understand clearly that we're not presupposing the outcome? Thank you very much. All in favor on the motion?
Recorded
That's
vote.
carried.
Recorded, sir.
Recorded vote requested by Councillor Dickerson.
On the recorded vote, Councillor Dickerson?
Yes.
Councillor McLean?
Yes.
Councillor O'Connell?
Yes.
Councillor Pickles?
Yes.
Councillor Rodrigue?
Yes.
Councillor Ash? Yes. Mayor Ryan?
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Your Worship, on that, there was a petition that I handed into the clerk on this that she could attach to the report in regards to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Bylaws.
Then,
Moved by Councillor Dickerson, seconded by Councillor Rodrigue. Bylaws 7299 through 7309 inclusive. Any to be pulled? Being none, all in favor? That is carried. Congratulations, Mr. Kowalski. You are now officially the treasurer of the corporation of the city of Pickering.
You mean you were before?
That concludes the bylaws.
Oh.
Councillor Rodrigue, question?
No, I thought we were coming to other business.
Yeah, we're going into other business. You're right there. Okay. Councillor Rodrigue.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2 matters I'd like to bring forward for the notification of perhaps council and the, I've got quite a few of these I can pass down, which is our Doors Open program coming up. The first one we did was 2 years ago in our bicentennial year, 2011. Ajax had one, we had one that was better, as it turned out, better attended, happier people, and it was such a success that we let them go next year, and it's our turn again this year. I'm on the committee, but there's been a lot of people putting a lot of effort into this, and what I've handed out now is the new revised program. We're going to print another 3,000 or 4,000 of these, one location changed, but it's a golden opportunity. It's free. As Jack Ballinger would say, it's free, and you get to visit a whole number of sites, not just old buildings, everything from the nuclear plant, City Hall, because there's some people of the public would please welcome you into City Hall. We'll show you around. I think we can sit in the mayor's chair and get a photograph as well. That would be great. We'll move the nameplate, though, you know. And on the following day, on the Sunday, the Pickering Museum Village, it's their free day, but we're combining it with our free day because it's one of the best-kept secrets in Pickering. So these will be printed up another 3,000-4,000 by about Friday. And I encourage all people to come out. It's a marvelous opportunity to learn about the history, the culture. There'll be activities at some place, everything from the Heron Gate Barn Theatre. There's a walking tour of Whitevale that was organized separately, but at the same time as well. It's a fabulous event. I really look forward to it. And that's all I'm going to say for now. Please come out to Doors Open. It's an Ontario Government Ministry program. And the other item I'd like to bring to your attention to, and I was hoping to have some flyers here, is the Claremont Heritage Festival. We recognize this by unanimous vote. They'll have a recognition for their special weekend day, and it runs Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Every kind of events there, things for children, things for adults, antique car show, live entertainment, beer tent. If nothing gets you out, that should help you get out there. Historic village tour, country western dancing, all kinds of things every day. I'll try for anybody who wants it. So actually, it's posted on my website, so that's a good place to get information on it. And it's also an event where we all unanimously, just previously, agreed that we would grant $1,000 to the entire community for all of the various events to help them offset some of their costs, because they does a wonderful job. I'd also like to thank Mr. Prevedel for getting in those gateway gardens. You know, we've been working on it for, what, 2-3 years, and just in the nick of time, we've got some mums planted, and I know our staff's worked on making the best of a bad situation with the Durham Regional Road rolling through there. So don't miss this event either. It's this weekend coming up, you know, five days from now, the Claremont Heritage Festival. Thank you.
Further other business? Further other business? Further? Councillor Dickerson?
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to make a brief report on tonight's motion reflecting myself. In bringing their motion tonight to have me removed.
Point of order, the motion's been dealt with. You can't use other business to speak to an item that's already been dealt with. I've been ruled out of order on this many times.
I'll defer to the clerk.
We have had discussions previously in other business. When you look at the rules of procedure, it states congratulatory events and reports. There has been leeway historically, so I can't really rule it completely out of order because other business has been extended to numerous things, unfortunately.
Councillor Dickerson?
I'll challenge the chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, you have ruled items out of order when you're speaking to...
Councillor Dickerson, please.
No discussion
Councillor Dickerson.
Speaking to items that have already been duly moved and passed and dealt with, you cannot speak to them again in other business. It may not be the rules of procedure, but it's certainly been the practice, Mr. Mayor, and you know that. So if that's your ruling, I will challenge that.
Thank you, Councillor. The chair, challenge the chair is always in order. Challenge to the chair.
Recorded vote, and just to reiterate,
For clarity,
challenge, a yes is you agree with the chair's ruling, a no is you don't agree with the chair's ruling.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Do I have a seconder for the challenge?
Second that.
Councillor O'Connell?
No.
Councillor Pickles?
Yes.
Councillor Rodriguez?
No.
Councillor Ash?
Yes.
Councillor Dickerson?
Yes.
Councillor McLean?
Nope.
Mayor Ryan?
yes.
Motion, the chair is in order.
Thank you.
Dickerson?
Thank you, Your Worship. In bringing their motion tonight to have me removed as Deputy Mayor and to remove me from Viridian's Board of Directors, The mover and seconder have demonstrated their lack of respect, most of all, for our judicial process. The allegations against me under the Municipal Elections Act were pursued with uncommon vigor by the Compliance Audit Committee's special prosecutor and defended with equal vigor by myself and my legal counsel. When this matter was finally before the court and all was said and done, the Compliance Audit Committee, the special prosecutor, and the presiding judge all agreed that one, I'm sorry, Councillor, I'll wait till you're finished speaking. Please, don't be rude while I'm speaking. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. And the presiding judge all agreed that, one, there were only 2 minor items, not 5, to deal with, and 2, that in both circumstances, the unclear language contained in the Municipal Election Act resulted in my being guilty of bona fide errors of judgment. In other words, of misinterpreting the Act. The first item dealt with an amount I paid as an honorarium. I incorrectly noted this as a post-election wage when it ought to have been noted as a gift. The second item was for payment.
Mr. Mayor, there's a very rude resident yelling obscenities.
Councillor, you know what? It's been a long night. Councillor Dickerson, continue your statement, and then we'll be done.
Thank you. The second item was for payment to 2 individuals for picking up my election signs, taking them apart, cleaning them, and packaging them up for storage. The court held this expense ought to have been noted as a pre-election expense, rather than the post-election designation I attributed it to on my filed financial statement. They also noted that there was never a suggestion at any time that any public monies were ever involved. At this time, I would like to point out that a year ago, I presented a letter to the Audit Committee to conclude this case with a settlement offer. The committee refused, presumably on the advice of their special prosecutor. A year and $168,000 later, they settled for an additional fine of $4,500 and a verdict on the 2 minor items. At the conclusion, when all was said and done, the agreed statement of fact notes that while acting in good faith, an overspending of $2,909.65 occurred. Because these were inadvertent accounting errors, neither the special prosecutor nor the trial judge were of the opinion this called for a removal from office. What is disrespectful by Councillors McLean and O'Connell is their unwillingness to accept the judge's final ruling because it is not to their liking. And this goes particularly to Councillor McLean, who is a retired police officer and a member of Durham Regional Police Services Board. More than anyone, he ought to know the finality of a judgment and calls into question his competence to sit on that board any longer. I have accepted the findings made my apologies, learned from mistakes made, repaid the city any monies owed, and have moved on. I remain committed to continuing to fulfill the serious work I do on behalf of my community, in particular to the good people of Ward 2. That commitment has not, nor ever will, waver, and remains as strong as ever. I am proud of my role in reconstruction of the Frenchman's Bay Harbor entrance, of realizing a long-held vision of an enclosed pedestrian bridge spanning Highway 401, and of my engagement with planners, staff, and residents alike in creating a new and vibrant downtown core. As this term of office shortly enters into its final year, I will continue to dedicate my time to issues important to residents. From plans to guide the development of Seton, to continue working with Mayor Ryan and Council to attract a 5-star hotel and convention centre, complete with a performing arts and visual arts centre, and to continue growing this great city as one of Canada's best to live in, to play in, and to start and grow a business in. I have moved past this resolution tonight and wish to thank the members of Council who have reaffirmed their confidence in the positions I hold. I would suggest others do the same. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councillor Dickerson, seconded by Councillor Pickles. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Could have done any lead to introduce.